Hi everyone, let's talk about how to unpack the Programming Hardware Essentials Kit. This is how the kit comes. You'll notice right on the front cover, we have a QR code which will take you to a resource page with this video, plus the checklists and a reference sheet giving you specs on all the parts. Once we open up the box, you'll see right on top, we actually have a checklist. Now this checklist, actually, we're going to go to in just a moment, gives you lots of information about the particulars for each part. It's really, really handy. Let's talk about the version number for your checklist. You want to be using a version that's 1.3 or later, and that's dated August 17th, 2023. So if you have one that's dated earlier than August 17th, I did mail out new copies of this checklist, but if you don't have your new checklist yet, check your email and feel free to email me, sales@fvresearch.com, and then I'll get you an updated checklist. But I did correct some tray numbers, so you want to be sure you're using version 1.3 dated August 17th, 2023 or later. When you look at the unpacking checklist, you'll notice it has a spot with the special part number, a picture of the actual part, and then the description in caps is the same description you'll see on the labels for most of the individual items. It also has a location. You'll see here it says box 3, tray 5. So let's talk about that for a moment. I recommend the Harbor Freight Storehouse 10 parts box set. It actually has 10 separate trays that allows you to organize all your parts. And I've designed a label packet that allows you to organize everything. So that box and tray number you see on the checklist corresponds to this. And then whenever I teach classes, I help students find, or help you, I should say, even find where to find each part by going to that box and tray number. You can see that this box for the Hardware Programming Essentials Kit is actually parts box 3. That's because boxes 1 and 2 are for the Electronics Essentials Kit, which is a separate kit. Now, here's the parts box. By the way, when we're numbering these trays to keep track, we mentioned this is box 3. The numbering starts on the top left and then goes down. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then tray 6 starts up here on the top right, coming all the way down to tray 10. Now, when you order your kit, you'll have the opportunity to add the parts box to your order. And when you buy the parts box from me, then you'll also get a set of pre-printed, ready-to-cut labels that you can put in the lid of each of those parts. Now, these labels are available for you to download and print yourself. For more information, go ahead and go to my website, fvresearch.com. You'll see the link here right on the bottom of the video. Again, though, when you buy the package from me with the parts box kit, then you'll get a label for the top of the box, some instructions on actually installing the labels, and then a set of ready-to-cut labels. And then included with the ready-to-cut labels is a two-sided tape dispenser. So you'll notice what we do is, and I'll go over this a little bit more in a moment, you're gonna put 2 lines of double-sided tape, and then you install these cards into the lid of each tray. So I'll give you everything you need when you buy the parts box from me. So next up, I wanna show you how to cut out these labels and then install them into your parts box. You want to install all 10 ready-to-cut labels into the parts box trays before you unpack any individual parts. That way you'll have that extra double check to know that you're putting it exactly where it should go. So notice that the ready-to-cut labels are double-sided. We want the side that has the outlined box around the box and tray number. See how it's black, this little rectangle here? We want that to be visible inside the lid. So that means that the actual two-sided tape is going to be applied to the other side. Let me show you what I mean. Here's the cutout label for box 3, tray 1. And we can see here, this side has that rectangle drawn around the box 3, tray 1. And then it has these lines that represent the individual slots in that tray. So here's tray 1. You can see it has those same lines. What we're going to do is we're going to apply the two-sided tape to this side of the card. And then when we put it into the lid, then we apply that tape here. So then you can see what happens is when you open up the tray, you can see the description for the different parts and they correspond to the different sections. Now, not all trays have sections. Some are just one wide open spot, but regardless, the label should represent the lines and the trays that you have for that particular tray. But you can see what happens when we close it, then we can see from the outside the box and the tray number, plus an overall description of the parts you can find in that box. So that's why, if you're wondering why it seems like the card is upside down when you go from one side to the other. So again, here we are with box 3, tray 1, and the side with the rectangle is what we see inside the box. So I'm going to turn this over. As you can see from the instructions with the cards, we're going to apply 2 lines of the double-sided tape on the proper side of the card. And we just apply it to straight across like this. There's 1, and then here's 2. And then we'll take it, and I'm going to make sure that I put it in the right way. Now, when we put it in the lid, with the spots, I should say the spots of the trays, the individual sections facing you, then we'll put the card in the top so that we can read it inside, and then we'll set it right in there, and then press it in, and we're ready to go. So now the label is stuck to the top of the lid, and then when we close it, then we can see this is the box 3, tray 1 for the push buttons and relays. Now I recommend that you do 2 trays at a time on one piece of paper. So you're going to do tray 1 and tray 2, and after those 2 are done, move on to tray 3 and 4. Install all 10 labels before you work on any parts. Let's take a look at another example. This is box 3, tray 3, and so we can see from the outside we have motors, and then this is the box where you'll put your Arduino or Raspberry Pi. More on that in just a moment. When we open it up, this card could be a little more confusing on which direction to put it, because when you look on the inside, it's actually one big open box. So there are no dividing lines for sections within the card. But I know which side of the card to face inside because we have the rectangle around the box 3, tray 3. So I know that that indicator with the rectangle, that means that's what I should be able to see when the box is open. Now, another thing about the Arduino Raspberry Pi, my actual hardware kit can be used with Arduinos or Raspberry Pis, basically any microcontrollers or single board computers. The kit does not come with that because it can be used with many different devices. For instance, in my supercharged science classes, we use an Arduino Uno, which is purchased separately. But I wanted to have a place for you to keep it, so I've indicated the Arduino or Raspberry Pi could go here in box 3, tray 3. Just remember that it is separate from the kit and doesn't come with it. One more thing to mention regarding these labels, every time you look at the label from the inside, that rectangle that's outlined should be in the top left corner of the tray. So at this point, go ahead and pause the video and install all 10 cards into your parts box trays. Now it's time to start unpacking our parts. Remember, we're going to remove one part at a time, put it away in its proper spot before we move on to another part. Quick note about what you see in here. The majority of the parts are usually in a blue bag of some kind. Those are all from my main supplier. But you'll see other individual parts. That just means these are parts that I obtained from other suppliers in order to get the kits out in a timely manner. But there's nothing unique or different about them being in or outside of the bag. You just want to look for the part based on the checklist. Speaking of the checklist, this is where we want to have this out and ready to go. It's going to be very handy as you unpack your parts. Let's review the information provided on the checklist. We have a little checkbox that will mark as soon as the part is put away where it goes. We have a part number marked here with P/N in capital letters. That corresponds to the actual part number from my main supplier. Not every single part will have a number ending with ND, but most of them do. And this is a new addition I added recently where I'm giving you the part numbers that are unique to your particular kit. Essentially what happens is when I order a batch of kits, sometimes I have to track down replacements and the manufacturer part numbers will change even though the particulars of that part stay the same. In other words, it's still, for instance, a red LED that runs off of 2 volts. But I want to make this as easy as possible for you to put everything away. So I'm giving you the distributor's part number. Now I'm going to show you where that is on the label in just a moment. It shows you the quantity, how many should be in the kit. Here's a little picture of it. You can see then that this is a USB cable. These are used to connect an Arduino Uno R3. Now here in capital letters, that description you see in all caps is the same description we'll see on the bag label. And again, I'll show you that in a moment. Underneath here in parentheses, these are alternate descriptions. Sometimes the description that is on the bag is a little cryptic, frankly. It could be a little hard to understand. For instance, what does CBL stand for? Well, I make a little reference here in parentheses. That really, we find here that it stands for cable. But anyways, we'll watch for that capital letters label. And then here, of course, we see its location, box 3, tray 5. Now, on the front page of your checklist, you notice I give you an example. When we see PN, that's the number we're representing. You're looking for PN, and then there's that part number ending with ND. That's exactly like we see on most of our part numbers. By the way, if it's one of the alternate sources, then I either have a description or the different kind of part number, but every part should have a description that will help you find where that part is within your kit. But then again, remember the description, you'll see here it's DESC, and then we can see there it's cable, USB 2.0, et cetera, et cetera. And that corresponds to exactly what we see in capital letters here. So that's what we're looking for. So here's the part right here, and we can see here, there's the part number, AE 106, etc., right there under the PN. And then here's the description in capital letters right on the bag. So let's put this in place. We can see then, where does this go? This goes in box 3, tray 5. So here we have box 3, tray 5. And when we open that up, we can see inside it indicates USB cable. By reading it on the inside of the label, we know that this is a confirmation of where this part goes. We want to take parts out of their bags, and with your USB cable, I also recommend undoing the tie. And this is a pretty thick cable, so you may need to unravel it and then stretch it out and then wrap it so that it just fits inside. The breadboard and jumpers are also going to go in this tray. I will make one mention, if you find that this tray is a little too crammed with the breadboard and the USB cable and the 9-volt battery connectors, you might consider keeping the USB cable separate. But everything did fit when I tested it, so we'll see how it goes. We're going to do the red LEDs, which comes up next after the USB cable. We could see here the part number 3651182ND. And then sure enough, I look for the PN amongst the bags, and here's PN with that part number. And then the capitalized description, LED red clear 5mm. Here it is here, LED red clear 5mm. By the way, if you're wondering what TH means, that stands for through hole, which means that it has pins designed to go through the holes in a printed circuit board. Also very useful for prototyping or breadboards also. So we can see that this is going to go into tray 8. Let's grab that tray. Here's tray 8, and we see here that it says LEDs on the outside. That's a good start. If we open her up, looking at all the different sections, we can see here's red LEDs. And so red LEDs, that means, let me zoom out just a little. That means red LEDs are going to go in the top left. And so we just pour these out of the bag and then put all of the LEDs into that compartment. So we can see here then, as you go through the checklist, you're going to find some bicolor LEDs and some capacitors, other parts. And each will just go in its own section. But you can see here the top row across the tray, top here, the lid, corresponds to the top row of the actual compartments. One final note before you work on unpacking the rest of your parts. During this video, we've been using the unpacking checklist. But when you start working on projects, I recommend that you use the reference list. It's the same list of parts, but it gives you some different information. It gives you the schematic symbol or the drawn symbol that represents that part. That'll be very useful when you start reading the schematic diagrams. And it gives you some more particulars on each part. It does also tell you where to find each part. You can get the reference list from the product page on the Hardware Programming Essentials Kit product page itself, I should say. So go ahead and get that reference list when you have a chance. Even if you don't print it out, just having it available on your computer will be very useful. Well, now it's time to unpack all the rest of your parts. Remember, just open up one bag at a time, put that part away before you move on to another. And anytime you have questions, feel free to email sales@fvresearch.com. Thanks for watching.